Camilla Rowe didn't knock. She came charging across the cul-de-sac like a linebacker in pearls, then without warning launched herself onto the hood of my Lamborghini, screaming about community standards as the carbon fiber crumpled beneath her. The sound of her heels cracking my six-figure dream car was the moment I realized this wasn't about rules. This was war. You'd think in a place called Azalea Grove, where every mailbox is engraved, every lawn is edged with precision, and even the birds seem to sing on cue, people would have better things to do than obsess over a neighbor's car. But apparently nothing triggers latent pettiness, quite like the gleam of hand-buffed Italian carbon fiber, purring into a neighborhood built on silent competition and curated aesthetics. My mistake, evidently, was daring to live a little. After 30 years of building my dealership empire from scratch, working 15-hour days, finessing deals, managing headaches across 12 showrooms, I finally rewarded myself. A gift. A monument, really. Obsidian black with rose undertones in direct sunlight. A Lamborghini Aventador custom badging V12 Symphony, the kind of machine that hums success without saying a word. I parked it in my new driveway in Azalea Grove beneath the soft petals of the heirloom roses I planted in memory of my late wife. They were her favorites, deep pink Eden climbers trailing the wrought iron archway and bordering the stone path. The car and the garden, two halves of my heart. And that I learned quickly was a problem for someone. Camilla Rowe 59, queen of the HOA, had built her personal kingdom out of Whisper's rules and a terrifyingly dense three-ring binder labeled Community Aesthetics Code. She ran the neighborhood with the cheerful tyranny of a substitute teacher with tenure and no supervision. Everything about her was sharp, the tilt of her chin, the sarcasm behind her smile, the clack of her low heels on asphalt. Her house naturally was positioned dead center of the grove, an architectural cathedral to artificial perfection. Vinyl siding scrubbed twice a month, solar uplights, illuminating concrete urns that housed plastic hydrangeas, and not a blade of grass dared lean too far left. From the moment I rolled in, she watched me. I could feel it. Her windows became eyes. Her clipped welcome was lukewarm at best. The real hostility didn't begin until the first Saturday morning I detailed the Aventador in my driveway. I caught her staring, arms, folded nostrils flaring ever so slightly at the purr of Italian horsepower. She said nothing, just scribbled something on a notepad and walked away. That week I found a flimsy letter on my windshield reminder all vehicles must be parked entirely within property lines to ensure street uniformity. The Lambo was parked dead center in my wide brick driveway naturally. I smiled, chalked it up to Karen-like micromanagement, and waved extra cheerfully at Camilla the next day. She glared back like I'd keyed her soul. Then came the HOA bulletin. Poorly formatted, grainy clip art of clipboards and gavel icons, and buried in it a new guideline adjustment for the neighborhood. To preserve the aesthetic harmony of Azalea Grove, vehicles considered excessive in performance style or perceived extravagance may be deemed non-conforming and subject to review by the board. No brands named, no horsepower thresholds. Just that a rubber band rule made to snap around my Lambo and nothing else. I called the HOA office. The assistant, bless her heart, sounded exhausted just hearing the word Camilla. She couldn't provide minutes from the board vote. It was passed under discretionary authority, she muttered, which I knew was code for Camilla made it up and no one dared object. I decided not to let it bother me. I was a grown man, a businessman. I'd weathered supply chain breakdowns, lawsuits, and recessions. I wasn't going to be bullied by a clipboard with delusions of grandeur. Still, I couldn't deny the tension thickening in the air each time I reversed into my driveway, the soft growl of the engine making her blinds twitch. Then came the notes. One shoved under my mat, another slipped into my mailbox. Handwritten in precise cursive, always unsigned. Your vehicle is causing distress among some residents. Azalea Grove values modesty and class, not flashy indulgence. One even had a quote from Thoreau. Thoreau. As if my car somehow violated transcendentalism. The final straw came one mild spring afternoon. The roses were blooming. I had just come back from a short drive, iced coffee in one hand, keys in the other. The car looked like a sculpture, sunlight tracing its lines. I stood there for a moment, taking it in. That's when I heard it. Heavy footsteps, fast, angry. I turned. Camilla was charging across the street like a linebacker in beige slacks. Her eyes were wild-mouthed, tight fists clenched. Enough, she shrieked. And then, to my absolute disbelief, she jumped. With a force that seemed to defy physics and reason, she launched herself onto the hood of the Lamborghini. The sound, a sickening crack of composite material, rang out like a gunshot. I froze. For one absurd second, I thought maybe she'd slipped. But no, she was up there, standing, bouncing, screaming. No more of this thing in our neighborhood. You think you're better than everyone? You think this is your street? The hood crumpled beneath her weight. I lunged forward. Camilla, get off the car. Are you out of your mind? She stumbled back, slipped, and scraped her side down the front fender before landing hard on the driveway. There was silence. Deafening, stunned silence. A neighbor across the street dropped his rake. A dog barked nervously from a window. Camilla sat dazed but defiant, hair wild, panting, like she'd just finished a marathon of righteousness. Now you'll listen, she hissed. Maybe now you'll respect the code. I pulled out my phone with a cold, controlled fury. I'm calling the police, I said flatly. This is vandalism. You just destroyed a six-figure vehicle. Her face blanched just for a moment. Then she snapped, you're the one breaking the rules. You think money puts you above the law? Gary, her husband, eternally hovering and wearing his Corvette cap like it granted him moral authority, came stumbling out the door. Camilla, what the hell? She cut him off. He forced my hand. This car, it's a blight. The police arrived within minutes. I showed them the damage. The cracked hood, the spider-webbed carbon fiber, the scratches like claw marks across the paint. My security cam footage didn't catch the moment of impact, but it captured enough: her charge, her stance on the hood, her descent. The officers took notes, barely masking their disbelief. One of them actually said, "Ma'am, jumping on someone's car is not an approved method of HOA enforcement." I filed a report, took statements. Neighbors whispered and watched from their porches, their once fearful eyes now wide with something else. Maybe amusement, maybe relief. I didn't say much, just took photos. Not just of the car, but of her standing there, red-faced and breathless, in front of the flowers she said she wanted to protect. Later that evening, I stood in the garden watching the sun melt behind the oaks. The scent of roses hung in the air. My Aventador sat wounded quiet, as if even the engine didn't know what to make of the day. But I knew. I knew this wasn't over. Camilla had declared war. She thought she'd jumped on a car. She had no idea she'd just landed on a hornet's nest. That night, long after the last rays of daylight faded from the iron trellis, and the scent of my late wife's roses still lingered in the quiet, I sat at my desk staring at the police report and the repair estimate, and a high-resolution photo of my Aventador's mangled hood, all laid out like evidence in a murder case, which in a way it was. The crime wasn't just against a vehicle. It was against dignity, against peace, and against the idea that you could simply exist, succeed, and be left alone. I wasn't angry anymore. I was surgical. Camilla Rowe didn't just jump on my car. She jumped into my world, a world where every decimal matters, where I had built a network of high-end dealerships and in-house financing arms that extended across 3 states and into the lives of tens of thousands of clients. It dawned on me slowly, like fog lifting off a field, that I wasn't the only one with something to lose. The Rose, Camilla, and her husband Franklin, they had been playing a game of appearances. Their outfits were tailored but dated. Their lawn was perfect but plastic. Their cars, like their authority, were old luxury wrapped in new insecurity. It started as a hunch. I pulled up our internal dealer-client database the next morning, sipping my black coffee and watching dew gather on rose petals outside my office window. Within minutes, I had a hit. Franklin Rowe, 62, had purchased a 2009 Corvette Grand Sport base model 3 years ago through one of my subprime finance branches. His account 2.5 months delinquent. Interest accruing daily. Attempts to contact ignored. My jaw flexed. Then came the next domino. A quick search of Camilla's name turned up a co-signer record. She had backed a loan for a newer SUV purchased by none other than Lynette Gordon, the HOA treasurer, and one of Camilla's most loyal foot soldiers. That SUV, I recalled, was often parked across 2 spots outside the clubhouse during HOA meetings, as if its very presence validated their authority. The loan status read, 3 months behind. Legal repossession eligible. My fingers flew. I ran searches on every HOA board member. Tobias Hill, the one who always stood beside Camilla at HOA events like a statue of disapproval, had a luxury sedan through one of our affiliate lots. Delinquent. Ramona Blake, the one who had once filed a noise complaint when my garden shears clicked too loudly, financed a large Ford pickup 2 years ago with zero down. Also delinquent. This wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern, an ecosystem of overreach propped up by unpaid bills and borrowed prestige. And here was the kicker: all of them had been financed through companies I owned, operated, or had legal access to. That meant every missed payment, every bounced auto draft, every ignored notice, they were all mine to act on. I felt the corner of my mouth curl. They tried to tear me down over an exotic car and a row of roses. What they didn't realize was they'd parked their reputations in my garage the day they signed those contracts. By noon, I had called my attorney. By 2, I had video meetings with my collections department. By sunset, I had a plan. First, the civil suit against Camilla. Vandalism, destruction of private property, estimated repair cost for a custom carbon fiber hood, and full-body respray just north of $38,000. We added punitive damages. I included police reports, witness statements, and security cam footage. The package we built was airtight. My lawyer grinned. "We're not just suing," he said. "We're going to make an example." Second, I authorized vehicle repossession proceedings against Franklin, Lynette, Tobias, and Ramona. All of them were in default. All of them had signed contracts that allowed us to repossess at will. I instructed my team to coordinate the timing. No sneak peeks. I wanted them all to feel the pull at once. Third, I began quietly building a document folder, a spreadsheet of inconsistencies between HOA community reports and actual visible expenditures. For example, that newly landscaped roundabout near Camilla's house reported as a $9,200 expense. But according to the landscaping company I contacted, they only billed $3,600. The rest disappeared. Camilla's home had received community beautification grants, a phrase that didn't exist in the HOA charter. My accountant, a former IRS analyst with a grudge against fraud, was already salivating. But that was for later. For now, I watched. I waited. I let the trap settle around them. The repossessions were set for a Friday morning, just after 7 a.m., when traffic was light and most residents were getting coffee or checking sprinklers. I received text updates as they happened. Franklin Rowe's Corvette was hooked quietly from the street outside his house. The tow driver reported no resistance, just a stunned silence as Franklin opened the door in his robe and watched it disappear, keys still inside. Lynette's SUV was next. She ran out screaming, bathrobe flapping, mascara smudged. Camilla appeared moments later, phone in hand, shouting about harassment and retaliation. The driver calmly handed over the repo order and told them to call the lender. Camilla's face when she saw my company's name on the document must have been priceless. Tobias's luxury sedan was pulled from his carport like an embarrassing secret exposed. Ramona's pickup was trickier. She tried to block the truck, yelling about HOA emergency vehicles. The police were called. They left with warnings and humiliation. News traveled fast. Azalea Grove's version of a social media storm took place on walkways, over mailboxes, and through back fence gossip. People whispered, pointed. The untouchables had just been very publicly touched. And while the vehicles were towed away, so too was their illusion of control. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Camilla stopped walking her perimeter rounds. Franklin was seen mowing the lawn with a frown so deep it could have cracked concrete. Lynette began missing HOA meetings. Tobias and Ramona became ghosts. And still I remained watering roses, detailing my loaner vehicle, while my Aventador awaited repair, and watching the petals drift down like quiet reminders that beauty, when rooted deeply, always endures. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I knew their finances were collapsing. I knew their pride was bleeding. But what I wanted now, what I needed, was truth. And the truth was buried somewhere inside HOA records I was about to drag into the sunlight. They thought they could enforce rules. I was about to enforce accountability. And unlike their phony, non-conforming vehicle clause, my terms would be legally binding and very, very public. The morning after the last of the repo trucks disappeared over the crest of Azalea Grove's meticulously paved main road, I stood at the edge of my rose garden with a mug of black coffee and a silence that felt earned. The petals glistened under the early sun, each bloom unfolding, as if unaware that the neighborhood's ruling class had just crumbled like a poorly built trellis under too much pressure. Camilla's reign had cracked, not with a single blow, but through a series of precise, legal, and exquisitely timed dismantlings. But what remained wasn't justice, not yet. What remained was the rot still hidden beneath the surface rot I now intended to expose. Because while their vehicles had been repossessed and their pride hauled away on flatbeds, what mattered most was accountability, and that would require light. Not gossip, not quiet retribution, but proof seen and heard by the very people they once ruled over with smug smiles and surprise finds. It began as all great reckoning stories do, with a paper trail, or in this case, a digital one, using my access as a homeowner and the HOA bylaws they themselves had so often weaponized. I formally requested 5 years of financial records. At first, I was met with stonewalling. Lynette Gordon, suddenly shy, emailed vague responses. Tobias tried to claim the system was temporarily inaccessible. Camilla. She went radio silent. But silence only paints guilt in louder colors. With 3 signatures from other residents, I escalated the request into a formal demand for financial transparency, citing the HOA's own community charter. When that didn't work, I posted a printed copy of the request and a list of unfulfilled document releases on the community bulletin board, right beneath the faded poster for last year's HOA spring bake sale. People noticed. Whispers became questions. Questions became calls. I wasn't the only one who'd felt the heat of Camilla's selective enforcement over the years. The retired couple who once got fined for having a bird bath. The young family told their Halloween pumpkins were in poor taste. The Army vet who parked a pickup an inch under the grass. We had all been policed by people who lived beyond their means, financed their superiority, and hid behind bylaws they themselves bent. So I called for a meeting, an emergency HOA assembly. As a homeowner in good standing with valid cause and support, I had the right. They couldn't stop it, and they knew it. The clubhouse filled quickly on a Thursday evening. Folding chairs scraped hardwood as neighbors filed in, murmuring, shifting. Camilla sat stiffly at the front table, Franklin beside her, his expression tight. Lynette and the others flanked them like disgraced royalty clinging to a crumbling court. I waited until the room settled, then stood. "Thank you all for coming," I said, voice even controlled. "I won't waste your time. I'm here to talk about transparency, about leadership, about where our dues have gone." I handed out printed reports, 3-page summaries of the HOA's known expenses versus estimates from actual vendors. Landscaping billed twice market rate. A phantom consultant fee $5,000 for community relations. A neighborhood beautification initiative that coincided exactly with the delivery of a new sectional to Camilla's front porch, marked white glove HOA expense in the ledger. Gasps spread like wildfire. Lynette paled. Ramona started stammering. And then, like a crack of thunder through floral-scented fog, a voice rose from the back. "I move for a full independent audit," said Walter Griggs, a 72-year-old retired CPA and one-time IRS auditor who spent his days tending bonsai and reading municipal budgets for fun. His voice was calm, lethal. "I second it," another resident said. And just like that, the vote was called. Camilla tried to object. She stood, trembling eyes flashing. "This is a witch hunt," she snapped. "An attack on volunteers who've given their time. And taken our money," someone shouted. The vote passed. Overwhelmingly. The audit was scheduled within a week. The firm brought in was one I personally recommended: reputable, impartial, ruthless. What they uncovered was worse than I imagined. Dozens of irregularities. Personal Amazon purchases marked as HOA supplies. Payments to non-existent vendors. Duplicate service contracts. HOA funds used for vacations, furniture, even partial car payments for Camilla and her board members. Over $60,000 in misused dues across 5 years. The findings were presented at a follow-up meeting, this time with a reporter from the local paper present. Camilla sat silently. Lynette wept. Franklin stared at the floor. Tobias and Ramona didn't even show. The room voted once again almost unanimously to remove the entire HOA board, effective immediately. Legal proceedings for restitution began. Camilla and Franklin quietly listed their home for sale 2 weeks later. The SUV was never replaced. Word spread. Other HOAs in the region began looking inward. What happened in Azalea Grove became a warning, a case study, a whispered legend. And through it all I remained, quiet, resolute. That spring my Aventador came back, gleaming, repaired, whole. The carbon fiber hood flawless, again deep black, with that subtle rose glint under direct sunlight. The day it returned, I parked it slowly in the driveway, beneath the arch of roses, now thicker than ever. Neighbors waved. Some stopped to admire it. A few took pictures. Nobody complained, no notes, no newsletters, no rules invented out of envy. Just silence, respect, and the soft rustle of petals. Camilla once claimed she acted for the good of the community, but the truth was she acted for control, for image, for power she never earned. And when she saw something she couldn't control, something bold, beautiful, and unapologetic, she tried to crush it. She failed, because no matter how loud a lie is told, it will never drown out the quiet truth that follows a man who plants roses, minds his business, and refuses to bow. And in the end, the roar of justice wasn't in the V12 engine or the thud of repo tires on asphalt. It was in the click of a gavel, the crinkle of a financial report, and the bloom of peace restored where thorns once ruled. Sometimes the people who scream the loudest about rules are the very ones breaking them behind closed doors. What happened in Azalea Grove is more than a neighborhood dispute over a car or a flower bed. It's a powerful reminder that truth, character, and quiet integrity always outlast manufactured power. In this story, Julian Mercer didn't fight back with rage or pettiness. He didn't retaliate with emotion. Instead, he used disciplined facts and lawful action. While others tried to shame him for his success, he remained respectful even when humiliated. But when that line was crossed, when his property was vandalized and his dignity attacked, he responded not with fists, but with strategy. That's a lesson many of us can carry into our own lives. Here's the core truth: bullies often stand on unstable ground, hoping fear will keep others from noticing the cracks beneath their feet. But the moment someone stands firm, calmly, and confidently, those cracks become visible to all. What Julian did, exposing lies with documents, not drama, showed that real justice isn't loud. It's clear, deliberate, and lasting. We're also reminded that success is not something to hide. If you've worked hard, if you've sacrificed, if you've built something meaningful, don't let anyone make you feel guilty for it. But do wear it with humility. Just like Julian, who parked his dream car beside the roses he planted in memory of his wife, success should be grounded in meaning, not vanity. It's not about flashing wealth, it's about honoring the journey that got you there. And to those who lead in any community, let this story serve as a warning. Leadership is a responsibility, not a license for control. When you abuse trust, when you hide behind rules while breaking them, yourself the fall will come. And when it does, it won't be quiet. To our loyal listeners and viewers here on US, Just a Story, thank you for spending your time with us. Your support means everything. If this story made you think, if it stirred something in you, please consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe a neighbor, maybe a friend, or maybe someone who's been quietly dealing with a bully for too long. Remember, truth takes root, justice takes time, and like a rose in spring, it always blooms when the moment is right. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay grounded, stay strong, and never be afraid to stand tall for what's right.